What if the real winner of World War II wasn't decided on the battlefield, but in the bank vaults and boardrooms of America? Picture this. It's London, 1940. Bombs are raining from the sky. Families are huddled in underground stations, listening to the world shake above them. Factories run day and night, churning out tanks and planes. But thousands of miles away, across the Atlantic in the quiet offices of New York and Washington, another war is being fought. This one isn't fought with guns, but with ledgers, gold bars, and secret deals. While Europe burned and bled, the United States was quietly transforming itself from a debtor nation into the world's banker. While British and Soviet soldiers paid for victory with their lives, America supplied the world with the tools of war. And for every ship, every plane, every bullet, America demanded payment in gold, in IOUs, and in global influence. Imagine secret gold trains crossing the Atlantic under the cover of darkness. Imagine desperate telegrams flying from London to Washington, begging for ships and supplies to hold back the tide. A new world order wasn't being written in peace treaties, but in balance sheets. What if the costliest war in human history was also the greatest financial heist? What if the price of survival was a bill that would take generations to pay? In this video, we're going to uncover the secret bill for victory and the staggering price Europe paid for its survival. But how did America manage to turn war into unprecedented wealth, while its allies paid the ultimate price? To understand this, we need to step back to the 1930s. The world is already in ruins, economically, if not yet physically. In Chicago, bread lines stretch for blocks. In small towns across the country, banks are failing by the thousands. The Great Depression has completely shattered the old global order. Europe, still reeling from the mountain of debt from World War I, is desperate for relief. In London, the Bank of England's gold reserves are dwindling. The British pound, which was once the world's anchor currency, is forced off the gold standard in 1931. In Paris and Berlin, leaders watch nervously as their own currencies collapse and unemployment soars into the millions. America is battered too, there's no doubt about it. But unlike Europe, it has three critical advantages: vast natural resources, a growing industrial base, and crucially, no foreign armies on its soil. At the time, isolationist sentiment ran incredibly high. The U.S. Congress passed a series of neutrality acts, absolutely determined to keep America out of another bloody European war. But the old debts remained. France and Britain still owed American banks billions of dollars from the last war. They pleaded for forgiveness, for some kind of relief, but Washington's answer was a firm no. No more bailouts, the headlines declared. The world's richest nations had become beggars overnight. And so the gold shipments began. Bar by bar, Europe's wealth flowed across the ocean to the vaults in New York. Each bar was a silent admission of weakness, a transfer of power. As European currencies faltered, the US dollar grew stronger and stronger. But how did the world's wealthiest nations find themselves in this position? Why did America refuse to help with Europe's old bills, only to change its tune when war broke out? Because as the first tanks rolled across the Polish border in 1939, a completely new kind of power play began. The rules of money were about to be rewritten, and the United States was holding the pen. The Lend Lease Act is often seen as an act of generosity, America's arsenal of democracy helping its friends, but it was also the most brilliant business deal in history. Under Lend Lease, the U.S. provided its allies with food, oil, and war materials. The official line was that these were loans to be repaid after the war. But the real genius was in the fine print. The U.S. didn't just want money back, it wanted access. It wanted to break up the old British Empire's exclusive trading bloc. It wanted its companies to have access to markets and resources that were once locked away. In essence, America was leasing out survival, and the rent was the old world order. While Britain spent nearly a quarter of its entire national wealth fighting the war, America's economy boomed. Its GDP almost doubled. By 1945, the United States held nearly two-thirds of the world's gold reserves. It had the strongest military, the strongest economy, and the strongest currency on the planet. The war had exhausted and bankrupted its allies and enemies alike, leaving America as the undisputed global leader. The British Empire was fading, and the American century had begun. So, was it a heist? Or was it just the inevitable consequence of a world turned upside down? The answer is complicated. But one thing is clear. The financial battles fought in the 1940s were just as decisive as the military ones. They reshaped our world in ways we are still feeling today. Imagine this. The world is engulfed in war. London endures relentless bombing every single night. Moscow is on high alert, bracing for a full-scale invasion. Across Britain and the Soviet Union, factories are running on empty, desperately short on steel, oil, and most importantly, hope. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, America is officially neutral. But its factories? They are roaring to life. Assembly lines, stretching for what seems like forever, are churning out an endless stream of tanks, planes, and trucks. The arsenal of democracy is being forged in places like Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Seattle. But there's a catch. None of this is free. Britain's gold reserves are bleeding out. To keep the vital supply ships sailing, Winston Churchill makes a desperate gamble. He authorizes secret convoys to ferry gold bars across the treacherous, U-boat-infested ocean. Gold-laden trains roll silently into the secure vaults of New York. The policy is brutally simple. Cash and carry. No credit allowed. Payment is required in gold or US dollars right on the spot. Britain is literally paying for its survival with the last of its treasure. Then, in 1941, everything changes. The Lend Lease Act is passed. America starts supplying Britain, the USSR, and other allies with a lifeline of weapons, food, and fuel, all on credit. It's a game changer, but every single shipment carries a hidden cost. Sterling balances begin to pile up in New York banks. London is essentially mortgaging its empire, promising future payments and economic concessions in exchange for the tools to win the war. This is the birth of dollar diplomacy. Quietly, behind the scenes, the U.S. starts making demands. Economic reforms, favorable trade deals, and a major say in post-war planning. As the pound sterling weakens, the American dollar grows stronger and more powerful. While brave sailors dodge torpedoes in the Atlantic convoys, and gold is loaded onto ships under the cover of darkness, Allied leaders are signing away their future economic independence just to survive today. How did America manage to supply the entire world while demanding payment in gold? What exactly did Churchill have to promise to keep those ships coming? As the Allies fought their way toward victory, the true cost of the war was only just beginning to surface. The guns eventually fall silent, but the financial reckoning is about to begin. Europe is a continent in ruins. Cities are flattened, railways are shattered, and national treasuries are completely empty. Britain, which was once the world's banker, is now its single biggest debtor. Nations like France, Italy, and Germany are desperate for American dollars to even begin the monumental task of rebuilding. In July of 1944, with the war still raging, exhausted world leaders gather at a quiet resort in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The atmosphere is thick with tension. The stakes couldn't be higher. America holds the cards. It has most of the world's gold reserves and therefore all the leverage. Out of this conference, a new global financial system is born. The US dollar, backed by solid gold, is crowned the world's official reserve currency. Every other nation agrees to peg its money to the dollar, placing their trust in America's overwhelming economic strength. Soon after, the Marshall Plan is announced. Billions of dollars in aid are pumped into rebuilding Europe. But this aid comes with strings attached. It opens the floodgates for American companies to pour their goods into the continent, cementing their economic dominance. The old European empires fade into history, and a new, undisputed superpower rises to take their place. The war was won with bullets and bombs, but the New World Order was built on gold and dollars. Imagine it's 1946. In Washington, gold bars are stacked high in Fort Knox, shining and secure. Meanwhile, in London, families still carry ration books, years after victory was declared. The pound, once the king of global currency, is struggling. In its place, the American dollar now rules the world. How did this happen? How did the victors of the war end up as debtors and the United States become the world's banker? Was this a fair deal, a necessary rescue, or was it the start of a new kind of empire, one built not on territory but on debt? Let's picture two very different cities in 1946. In London, bombed-out buildings are a constant grim reminder of the war. Ration books are a daily reality in every pocket. Children play in the rubble of what were once homes and shops, while their parents count every coin, wondering how they can possibly rebuild their lives and their nation. Now, travel across the Atlantic to Detroit. The city is alive. Factories that once churned out tanks and planes are now humming with peacetime production. Shiny new cars roll off the assembly lines, a symbol of prosperity. Suburbs are sprawling outwards, fueled by cheap credit and the powerful promise of the American dream. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Europe sacrificed its blood, its treasure, and ultimately its empire. America, physically untouched by the bombs, emerged from the war richer and stronger than ever before, holding the world's IOUs. While London was selling off its assets, gold bars were flowing into New York and Fort Knox. The vast overseas investments of the British and French empires were quietly sold off, not for profit, but for sheer survival. As the old empires faded, a new superpower was rising. So the big question is, did America save the world, or did it just buy it at a massive discount? What did Europe lose in this exchange that money could never buy back? The emotional echo of this time is very real. There's the pride of victory, mixed with the deep pain of loss, and an uneasy feeling that the bill for survival was paid with more than just money. So, what can we learn from this moment in history before the next global crisis writes a new, even more expensive bill? Because every war has a winner, a loser, and a ledger that never ever forgets. So, what does the secret bill for World War II really teach us? It's a warning, one that's etched in gold bars, in faded ration books, and in the shifting tides of global power. It's a lesson about the true, hidden cost of survival. While Europe was bleeding itself dry on the battlefield, America was turning the business of war into incredible wealth. It was rewriting the rules of global finance and quietly building a new kind of empire. This cycle tends to repeat itself. Nations rise on credit, they fight for their survival, and then they pay the price in debt, in lost influence, and in surrendered sovereignty. The victors become debtors, the bankers become kings. The emotional echo is timeless. Think about the panic of 1929, the devastation of 1945, the uncertainty of every financial crisis since. Each moment feels disturbingly similar to the choices we face today. Will the next superpower pay for its dominance in blood or in bonds? Will the next global crisis be settled on the battlefield or on the balance sheets of a new world order? The answers are hidden in the past, if you just know where to look. Subscribe for more cinematic economic history and learn how the past is still shaping your wallet today.